law friends here. Studies here. Sunday is Father's Day, and I'm going to be surrounded by my wonderful wife and grandson and 2 daughters that make my life worth living, and I'm going to be very special. And on Saturday, and then the next day, on Monday, we're going to be in San Antonio, Texas, visiting 2 detention centers where there are women and children who I hope to reunify as quickly as possible with their dads and that have moms. So we're for ending the detention. People who come to America, fleeing violence, fleeing totalitarian regimes that do not protect them, human smuggling, rapists, murderers, drug kingpins, and come here saying, I want protection. Our laws allow, it is not illegal to apply for asylum. It is the law of the land. So, I'm not going to say any more. We're going down there. We're going to go see them. We're going to go see the situation. And with that, I want Steny Hoyer, who we're so grateful is joining us on this trip. Steny.
Well, I want to thank Mr. Gutierrez and those with whom I'm standing here, all of whom have worked very, very hard to ensure that America has a rational and comprehensive immigration policy. In May, I joined 135 other House Democrats in sending a letter to Jay Johnson, the Secretary of Homeland Security, raising concerns with the unacceptable conditions in family detention centers housing those seeking asylum from Central America. I spent a lot of time in the late 80s and 90s behind the Iron Curtain and in many other countries, talking about conditions, humane conditions for the treatment of people, for the reunification of families, for the allowing people to immigrate, to be reunited with their father or their mother or their husband or their wife. Detaining children puts them at risk of medical and developmental problems in the short term and later in life. We must not ignore these reports that young children are being held in prison-like conditions. These are not criminals, while their parents await legal proceedings. Many of those being detained arrived after having fled from unspeakable hardships, of which Mr. Gutierrez just spoke: gang violence, hunger, political repression, extreme poverty, and yes, victims of criminal assaults. Our immigration policies ought to be based on our highest values, that America is and must continue to be a beacon of liberty and opportunity for the world. The people in these detention centers are, for the most part, the tired, the poor, the huddled masses yearning to breathe free, of which Emma Lazarus spoke, and which is emblazoned on our Statue of Liberty. I want to thank Representative Gutierrez, Representative Lofgren, who has worked so hard and so effectively, Lucille Roybal Allard, and all others who have been involved in this effort. I continue to call on our Republican friends to work with Democrats to pass comprehensive immigration reform legislation to fix a broken system. I am looking forward to being with my colleagues here in San Antonio at these centers to see firsthand whether America is living out its values and treating children and others as we would want our own children. As the father of 3 daughters, as the grandfather of 3, and the great-grandfather of 3 great-grandchildren, I am very concerned of how we as a country treat the children and grandchildren of others. America needs to treat them as well as we would want our own children treated. I thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's really great to go to San Antonio, and we have a very gracious host helping us make so many of the preparations. He's new here, but well known to many, even though he's new here. Congressman Castro from San Antonio. So happy. And I just want to make one point about Congressman Castro. I'm really looking forward to visiting his hometown because there was a picture in the Daily News, New York Daily News, says Castro going to be picked for vice president by Hillary. Hopefully after this, I'll be able to tell the difference between, because he's my guy. Thank you.
Well, they weren't talking about me, Luis. So, first, I want to thank Luis and Lucille and Zoe for taking the initiative to organize many of my colleagues to come down to Texas and to San Antonio. We're going to the Karnes and the Dilley facilities, the detention centers. Each of those facilities is more or less an hour away from my hometown of San Antonio. And I had a chance to visit Dilley a few months back. Many of us as Democrats, about 135 people, signed a letter saying that we don't think these women and children should be detained in these centers. At the same time, we want to go down there and make sure that the conditions under which they are being kept are safe, that they are humane, and that they are compassionate, that they're consistent with American principles and values while these women and children are there. Again, we understand that there is a legion, a network of nonprofit providers who are ready to assist in alternative housing for these folks. And we hope that the administration will heed our call to change these conditions and make alternative arrangements for the women and children. I've maintained all along that I believe that these folks, most of them, were refugees, and that they should have a chance to demonstrate that they're refugees. And I hope that in the coming months and years, we'll be able to do that. And so to my colleagues, thank you for making it down to San Antonio and to visit Karnes and Dilley, and I'll look forward to our trip on Monday and Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congressman. I got here to Congress in '93 with her, and I don't think there's a congressperson I've learned more about the seriousness and the importance of what we do and staying focused on getting results than Congresswoman Lucille Roubal Allard. Thank you, Congresswoman.
Thank you very much, Luis. I think our Democratic whip, Steny Hoyer, painted a very clear picture as to who these women and children are, why they are here, and the fact that they are not criminals. Many are here because they are seeking asylum, and it is not illegal in this country to seek asylum. And I would like to thank our Democratic whip, Steny Hoyer, and my colleagues who are here for joining me and my co-leaders, Luis Gutierrez and Zoe Lofgren, on our trip to Texas to tour the family detention facilities at Karnes and Dilley. You have heard this over and over again, that experts are telling us that the kind of detention at these facilities is having a very serious impact on mothers and a long-lasting negative on the mental health and the development of their children. Our trip to Texas is going to help us see for ourselves the conditions under which the mothers and the children are detained, and it will also give us an opportunity to learn firsthand about the experiences and the concerns that these mothers and these children have. As the ranking member on the Democratic, the ranking member on the House Homeland Security Appropriations Subcommittee, I'm looking forward to touring these facilities, which we've heard so much about, and speaking personally to the mothers and their children about the impacts of the detention that they are experiencing. And this is very, very important to have this visit, because it's going to enable me and my colleagues to be much more effective as we advocate for the most critical and meaningful reforms that are needed at our nation's family detentions. The main point is that women and children should not be detained in a place like this in the first place. We are absolutely opposed to that. But the fact is that they are in these facilities, and part of our mission is, as Congressman Castro said, is to see if these conditions are providing them with the nutrition, because we've heard terrible stories about not enough food, dirty water, just all kinds of horrible stories. And we're going to go down there to see what the conditions are. Hopefully, we're anticipating that some of them are going to be taken care of and cleaned up because they know we're coming. And we're going to figure a way of how to make sure that things don't deteriorate once we leave. So again, I want to say thank you to my participants here, Zoe Lofgren, who has just absolutely been incredible on these and so many issues when it comes to immigrants. Luis Gutierrez, who from the 20-some years that he and I came together, this has been his passion in fighting for immigrants in this country. And of course, my other colleagues who have always been there to support the efforts in making life better for our immigrants, to help us to stop this country from demonizing them and telling their real stories as to why they are here.
Thank you, Lucille. She drafted the letter and got 135 of us to sign on. We all helped her a little bit, but she did the bulk of the work. She leads us on the Judiciary Committee. We can't have a more outstanding leader than she. And I love her very, very much and respect her even more, if that's possible. We're delighted and so thankful for shedding a light on this. And Lucille and I have been her partners in this, and so delighted to organize this trip with her. Zoe Lofgren, the ranking member on immigration, and just an incredible American. Thank you, Zoe. Please.
Well, thank you very much, Luis, and thanks to all of these members who are coming down to Texas for our visit next week. Sunday is Father's Day, but if you live in California, you actually have to skip Father's Day to get to Texas in time. So I need to thank my husband and son and daughter for giving me a pass on Father's Day so I can see the children who America is incarcerating in the middle of Texas. You know, we've received, as has been said, a number of reports that are disturbing about the impact that being put in prison is having on these children. It was Luis's idea to go down to see firsthand. I'm grateful to him for that vision, and for Lucille helping to put this together. For the members of the Judiciary Committee who are here, Judy Chu and Lee, I'm also a member of the Immigration Subcommittee, as well as Mr. Castro, who's going to welcome us, and Mr. Grijalva, who's been a stalwart. But it seems to me that when you think about who these people are, they have escaped from a very seriously violent situation. They've made their way across thousands of miles to seek freedom and safety. And the first thing that happens to them, your tax dollars are used to lock them up in a prison. Some of these women and kids have been there for half a year or more. They have every legal right under current immigration law to apply for asylum. They have not committed a crime. Our only interest legally is to see that they come for their hearing. And we know that there are many ways to increase the assurance that they will come for their hearing. First, by helping to facilitate their connection with legal counsel, by accepting the offer of help from churches, the Lutherans, the Catholics, and so many others who've offered to keep in touch with these families to make sure that they make their court appearances. And we know that over 75% of these families have expressed a credible fear of persecution. So these are, for the most part, asylum seekers who ought to be treated with respect, who ought to be treated in the way that asylum seekers are treated around the United States. The UN Commission for Human Rights is taking a good hard look at how the United States is treating these families, because we are treating them far worse than refugees in the Middle East are being treated in Jordan. We have some work to do, and I know that we will be finding out the details next Monday. I look forward to it and to giving a full report when we return. Thank you.
So no one that's closer to the border understands the plight of immigrants and refugees that reach our border. And no one stood taller in voicing a demand that America treat them well, treat the children well, treat the parents well when they reached our border. Was a very clear, resounding voice against all of that hatred and bigotry when they came to our border last year, the tens of thousands of children. The congressman from Arizona, Raul Grijalva.
Thank you. Thank you, Luis. And let me thank my colleague, Mr. Castro, for his hospitality in initiating the idea. And to Zoe and Lucille and Luis for putting the trip together. I'm glad to go there. For me, it's not a trip, and I think, and Lucille said it really well, the whole idea of detention for women and children that are in the process of attempting to get refugee and asylum status in this country is abhorrent. It's wrong. Women and children. In detention for a civil violation as opposed to any criminal activity that one can point to. It's wrong. And so it's not about tinkering how you make their situation so much more comfortable and better, but fundamentally to raise the issue of why they are in there in the first place. The other thing I think different from the eloquence of my colleagues is the whole. These are private for-profit detention centers contracted with Homeland Security. In Eloy, 200 persons are doing a fast in that detention center, private for-profit as well. 2 unexplained deaths, 1 suicide, 1 still unresolved. And that's why we've asked the new Attorney General that an immediate investigation has to occur in Eloy and in that detention center. I mentioned that 63% of the $2 billion that we've spent in detention goes to the private prison industry in this country. Lack of transparency, and I would say Homeland Security, lack of oversight, and lack of real due process, because many things are proprietary to those private firms. So it's an opportunity to do 2 things, and I'm so glad for this trip to talk about conditions and why women and children are there, and the treatment in other facilities, but to also shine a light on the private prison industry for what they have contributed. This industry wrote 1070 in Arizona. Coincidentally, they have a guaranteed minimum from Homeland Security that they must have 34,000 beds occupied. So you have a private prison industry essentially deciding for ICE and Homeland Security who gets in and when they leave. And I think that is too much policy power for them. And I think this trip will give us an opportunity to look at policies, look at some corrective measures that need to be taken, and bring a very strong light on the women and children that are in detention. With that, let me thank everybody that organized it, and thank you very much.
I've stood with Judy Chu on many occasions, always in defense of our immigrant community, fairness and justice for our community. I'm so excited that she's coming on the trip. I want to advise all the members of the press, all 8 of the participants are here. It's the 8 of us that are coming. And she never says no. She always says yes. And in a very quiet fashion many times, but in a very strong fashion at the same time. Thank you, Judy Chu. Please come up and share with us.
Well, I want to thank Congress members Gutierrez, Roba Allard, and Lofgren for their leadership in putting this trip together. I'm here to take this crucial step in this trip to shed light on what's going on inside our nation's largest immigrant family detention centers. And that starts with our visit to Dilley and Karnes. Since family detention resurrected in the last year, we've heard far too many heartbreaking stories. We've heard the stories of women victims and horrendous gang violence, women arriving to the border seeking refuge only to be held in jail-like detention facilities for months at a time. Worse than delaying the safety they rightfully seek, detention is re-traumatizing these families. We know the stress and uncertainty of detention threatens childhood development, leads to weight loss and chronic illness. We know that this is breaking down the parent-child relationship. Children become uncertain as to whether their mothers can protect them, and mothers are losing hope. We've heard stories of mothers attempting suicide rather than be penned up any longer. Family detention is a clear contradiction to our values, and it must end. So with this trip, it's my hope that my colleagues and I can learn firsthand the stories of these brave families, how they've been treated once they've arrived, and most importantly, how we can help. We hope our presence will make it clear to these families that members of Congress are watching what's going on at these facilities, and we will not turn a blind eye. We will bring these stories to the Capitol, to the House floor, to the Department of Homeland Security, and we will fight until this cruel and un-American practice is ended once and for all.
And the last person to address us, she has a new experience in her life. So she joins me as a grandparent. She has two wonderful, brand new grandchildren. And as she shared, it just renews, as she says, the defense of children. It's always good to be because you forget, because sometimes kids grow up and you forget how much they need adults and how much they need. And so as a mom and a grandma and a leader, Sheila Jackson Lee.
Thank you very much, Luis. We call each other by our first names, but I refer to him as a very distinguished gentleman and long-standing in this battle. With my colleagues, Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren, we have worked together in judiciary, and their voices have never been silenced. And thank you, Judy Chu and Congressman Grijalva, Mr. Castro, and Ms. Ball Allard for their leadership. Let me just reinforce the time that I've spent dealing with immigration issues is the entire time of my career in the United States Congress. And just to turn the clock back 1 year, the time that we spent at the border, time that I spent with Zoe Lofgren, actually viewing these vulnerable people coming across the border. And I think we need to reassert that picture again. Late into the night, buses coming in, and little ones, 5 years old, 9 years old, bewildered, confused, and frightened. What family would lift their little ones out of a comfortable bed or at least a loving home and take a 1,500 or more journey to do us harm or to not seek the privileges and the rights that we actually have in this country under the immigration law, which is to seek asylum? Or the little 2-year-old that both my colleague and I saw in those jailed small detention places where the Customs and Border, particularly the Border Patrol, had the temporary jails, the eons of people in there coming for hope. And the one in particular that will be imprinted on my brain is the 2-year-old diapered little one that came with no one, whose family just shoved them into someone's hands. Come now a full year forward, and we have joined to say that enough is enough. And I think the insult of this whole story is that it is our tax dollars that are being utilized to hold people that have intellectual disabilities, that have noted to have brain cancer as a child, to have mothers who are expecting and have no medical care, or have just had a baby and have no postpartum or care for the child that is there now as a newborn. Stories that we have heard. And the Secretary of Homeland Security, I served last year as a ranking member on the Border Security and Maritime Security, just said in the last week in Houston, Texas, that the numbers of those crossing the border has drastically gone down. So we don't have a fear or an apprehension, but we're just holding people who legitimately could be in comfortable places of faith or other places where the faith community can embrace them. I saw many of those facilities on the border and assist them in making their court dates and making sure that they follow the laws, which they would only violate because of their confusion or lack of information. So I believe, as our letters indicated, that these centers are needed no more. And let me tell you, as I finish, what is the ultimate pressure and the heavy burden on our shoulders. America is looked to the welcoming arms by many, but more importantly, as a standard bearer for human rights. Oh, we have an array of challenges in our nation. We've just faced one last night in South Carolina. But we are looked at a place that my human rights will be protected. This is my refuge. I come here and someone will deal with me in a decent and human manner. But yet we are using taxpayer dollars to mandate that I must keep these people incarcerated. What a contrary perspective and view for human rights. I am only keeping them there for monetary value to businesses who are prisons, who have no obligation to report to the federal government these abuses. And I've introduced legislation to put private prisons under the same laws as our federal prisons. Everything must be reported. And so I think what we will have the opportunity to say upon this effort is no more. Enough is enough. There are alternatives, as my colleagues have said, who are standing ready to guide these individuals in the appropriate process while they're being processed or seeking asylum. Remember, a standard bearer for human rights has to be one that fits all who are the most vulnerable. And these women and children who I literally saw, some I held in my arms, show no fear or should not be feared by the American people. They have come here to seek a refuge that we have been known for, and enough is enough. And we must stop this incarceration, this detention, this mandatory payment process now. I thank both of you for your leadership.
Muy bien. Como han podido ver, somos hombres y mujeres. Somos blancos, somos afroamericanos, somos asiáticos. Hablamos español, hablamos inglés. Pero tenemos algo en común. Y es que las familias que vienen a este país buscando refugio, se les debe tratar con humanidad. Debemos garantizar los ideales que han construido y sobre las cuales están fundadas este país. Hemos hecho un sinnúmero de pasos, hemos tomado un sinnúmero de pasos. Yo le sugerí al grupo, y ustedes que ya me conocen bien después de 23 años, dije, hay que tomar acción también. Y el lunes tomaremos acción. Nos montaremos en aviones y iremos a la facilidad, la veremos y le traeremos a ustedes nuestra evaluación. Nuestra denuncia es clara. Nosotros vamos a pasar un día feliz, alegre con nuestras familias. Yo como padre voy a estar con mis 2 hijas, con mi nieto, con mi esposa, con todas aquellas personas que me hacen padre a mí. Pero también esos niños y defenderlos me hace padre a mí. Yo no puedo ser meramente padre porque tengo unas hijas, porque tengo una esposa, porque tengo un nieto. Si no defiendo a esos niños y el derecho que ellos tienen a retornar un día con su propio papá y sus propios padres. Eso yo creo que es el significado. Vamos a ir y levantar nuestras voces. Vamos a ir como grupo, 8 de nosotros, incluyendo Steny Hoyer. Y quiero decir que ya ustedes han visto 136. Último. A mí me parece idónea la posibilidad de ir ahí, especialmente cuando hemos escuchado las expresiones de Donald Trump ayer y antier, donde habló de específicamente mexicano, pero nosotros entendemos. Cuando él habla de mexicano, no habla de todos nosotros, todos los que hablan español aquí en este país. Salvadoreños para Donald Trump son mexicanos, puertorriqueños son mexicanos, dominicanos son mexicanos, los latinos que vienen aquí a este país. Cuando él dice que somos criminales, no, lo criminal es el sistema roto de inmigración. La gente son buena. Lo que está roto aquí y lo que está criminal es el que lleva más de 30 años sin arreglarse. Nosotros deberíamos estar enfocados en el sistema, pero ellos no. Ellos quieren enfocarse en las personas porque ellos creen que esa es la manera de ganar el debate. Hacer de las personas malas y poner miedo y peligro en nuestra sociedad y levantar eso. Gracias. Are there any questions that anybody has? Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.